Definitely one of those countries that people look up to see what we're doing next and the progress that we've made. So it gives them some way or plan to see the things and the steps that they need to take in their own communities and countries to progress for change. So one of the things about getting the vote is making sure that we all use it, but also to understand what we're voting for, whether that is at a local level, at a national level, or at a global level, and understanding those issues and being aware of what it is like to be someone that is not yourself, to get out of your own bubble and think about what is it like to live in this community if you're someone else that doesn't have the same opportunities or the same access to education, to freedom, and to thoughts and to thinking. So for me, it's about making sure that we understand the issues, that we know what's happening in our local communities, and that we share that with the people around us, our whānau, our family, our friends, and our communities and school groups, and the groups of people that we dearly love. Because if we can all share a bit more about what's happening, we can then inform ourselves to understand what the issues are, and we can vote accordingly. The other thing I wanted to share today is just to think about the issues that we've still got to go ahead with. And the work that we've been doing at a national level for the National Council of Women follows in the footsteps of these great women. It follows in the footsteps of ensuring that we have gender equality in this country. We need to drive attitudes and behaviour and build a culture in this country where anyone of any gender, whatever gender they prefer or assign to, can do anything they want. And that's the country that my forefathers came to be in, and many of yours, I'm sure, came to, and many of our tangata whenua have been thinking and wanting and I guess pushing for many years. So I encourage you all to get behind the Gender Equal New Zealand movement. Join us at the National Council of Women, join the local branch, and I know that Fiona will be out there with some membership forms, so you too can inform yourselves of those issues and create change like these women did 125 years ago. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Kia ora koutou katoa, and thank you for the opportunity to come back here on this special day to celebrate women's suffrage, and this year a special year, 125 years. Thank you to Fiona for being our branch president. I think people forget that Kate Shepherd helped establish the National Council of Women just 3 years after the vote was won. She never stopped, she never gave up, she continued to fight for justice and for what was right in this world. And so in 3 years' time we will celebrate 125 years of the National Council of Women, and it all started here, like it all started here with this extraordinary woman and the suffrage movement. We honour the courage and tenacity of the women that we see etched on this relief here today, and also the more than 24,000 women who signed the petition. I just think that is absolutely an extraordinary number when you think about the challenges that they would have faced back in those days. When we think about the fact that there was no electronic media, no Facebook, no Twitter accounts, no Give a Little page, and no means to communicate other than through cycling and pounding the pavements, street by street, collecting signatures and never giving up. And that's their story from me, never ever giving up. The first two petitions did not succeed. People forget that this was the third petition. The third one did succeed, and the rest is history. History for Christchurch, history for New Zealand, and history for the world. And then for over 60% of the female population to both register and vote in the election just a matter of weeks later is another part of that extraordinary story. Today we ask all women to feel inspired by the courage and tenacity that they represented, and to reflect also upon the importance those women placed on the right to vote once it had been won. We must never, ever take it for granted. It took 25 years for women to get the right to stand for Parliament after they won the right to vote, and another 15 years after that for the first woman to be elected to Parliament, and she was from Christchurch too, Elizabeth McCombs representing the seat of Littleton, and then another 14 years for the first woman to be appointed as a Cabinet Minister, also from Christchurch, the Honourable Mabel Howard. And my role as Mayor of the city, Kate Shepherd, and the suffrage movement are very much a part of the Christchurch story. They're an important part of our identity. They are who we are. They represent the commitment to carry on and to never, ever give up. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā rā tātou katoa.
He mihi mahana kia koutou ko tai mai nei. Ko tangiti ki o toku manga, ko herataunga toku awa, ko poneki taku turanga waiwai, no o tatahi aho inoa nei, ko Lan Farm toku ingoa. Kia ora tātou, my name is Lan Farm, and I am honoured to have been invited here to speak today alongside these fellow wahine and so many of you wonderful people. So thank you all for your presence, your words and your energy for marking this special day in our history. First, a brief spiel about me. I have both the privilege and the pain of being your elected regional councillor for Environment Canterbury. My background is in freshwater ecology, with a particular interest in New Zealand's most endangered native fish. They're unique, they're quirky, and they're mostly overlooked. I also direct a charitable organisation called Working Waters Trust, where our main focus is working with communities to help them get to know New Zealand's most endangered native fish. In 125 years, our society has come a long way, and arguably we still have a very long way to go. But I am proud and immensely grateful to stand here today as a woman in leadership who truly never felt that gender was a barrier. And that is, of course, thanks to so many women and feminist men who have continued to rightfully progress our society towards gender equality. But let's not allow Kate Shepherd, Meriti Tai Mangakahia, and many other courageous suffragettes movement to be something we merely reflect on. Today, I would like to encourage us to flex our citizenship muscles in any and every way we can, and to remember these women's movement not only with admiration and inspiration, but action. Because action is precisely what changes the world, and it is indeed these women's actions, both ordinary and extraordinary, that did change our world. But, well, it probably won't come as news to anyone here that we need our world to change again in the fundamental way that it did 125 years ago. Not a subtle tink around the edges, one day in the distant future change, but a wholesale revolution, feel it in your guts, urgent paradigm change. And this absolutely necessary change is needed across virtually every sector of our society, from mental health to midwifery, to family violence, to poverty, to reproductive rights, and beyond. And to achieve that change, we women and our people need to mobilise. We need to use our voices, and yes, that means to use our vote, but I wanted to challenge us here today to go further. Women's right to vote is accepted now as virtually a fundamental in our democracy. But democracy is not simply black or white or marked by presence or absence. It's about fair and equal representation, and women being fairly represented in roles of leadership is still a mountain that we are yet to conquer. Why women though? Why are we necessary? Why are we needed in this change? Well, I truly believe that women in leadership is what will lead our society out of our short-term consumer, throwaway, market-driven society and into a new era where care, love and compassion for each other, for future generations and critically for our environment is at the core. And wasn't it amazing hearing our Prime Minister speak about such things just this week? Because if it hasn't dawned on you yet, Papatuanuku, Mother Earth, our world, our environment, call it what you want, our ultimate provider is in crisis. Our fundamental needs to be part of a democracy and vote may well be won, but we are still fighting for the fundamentals of our environment. Things like clean drinking water, rivers and lakes where we can safely swim, and the rights of future generations to a stable climate. And this isn't a nice sentiment about wishing for clean drinking water or a stable climate for some distant land. Our reality right here in Canterbury, here in Christchurch, is that our freshwaters are damaged and at risk to climate changes. In mid-Canterbury in particular, some of our drinking water sources are so contaminated with nitrates that the District Health Board works with midwives to ensure that new mothers and pregnant women have access to safe drinking water, be it bottled or tank water. Even here in Christchurch, we learned from new science this year that nitrates from intensive land use across the Waimakariri are projected to move in the coming decades through our deep aquifers and under the Waimakariri River, polluting ours and our children's drinking water. Our northern boards are already showing increases. The more I've learned about these environmental issues and seen the pace of development, degradation and associated environmental decline, they're what really keeps me up at night, apart from my 4-month-old baby as well, are the bare basics in current and future generations' right to a safe environment. Are we going to have reliable, safe drinking water in even 10 or 20 years' time? Are we going to have soils which allow us to produce food when we can no longer rely on synthetic fertilisers produced using fossil fuels? The very real changes that our world needs cannot come solely from leaders and governors where women are not equally represented. The change will come because we women will drive it. Change will come from each and every one of us working and living in our families, runanga, schools, businesses and communities, through deciding that we want to embed into the very core of our society shared values of equality, true environmental and economic sustainability, and care and love for one another and our planet. So by all means, let's reflect and honour these great women here before us. And by all means, let's use our voices through our votes. But most importantly, let's organise, let's act in changing our very precious earth into Toitu Te Ao, a sustainable world. Thank you. Kia ora.
The girls from Mangati. Mangati, a little country district just half an hour inland from Timaru. We bring tulips, and Sonia has made this flag skitty because I am speaking about Marguerite Windhausen, the artist who made this magnificent sculpture, and Sonia is honouring Mary Takaria. So I'd like to say Margaret sends her best wishes. She's not able to be here today, and she's in Lower Hutt, but I wish you to know she sends best wishes and is so thrilled that her work is being really celebrated. She was born in Roermond, Holland, where her training was in
probably take for granted. I see the old photographs of women lining up at the voting stations to vote for the first time, and I think how pleased they must have been. By the time I registered to vote in the United States, the option was available to vote by mail, so I have never had the experience of physically going anywhere to vote. Instead, the election came to me, easy and convenient. Waiting in the mailbox a few weeks before each election would be a thick, large envelope with a large folded ballot inside. This for me signaled research time. I looked up the candidates in the election guide or online to see what they stood for and how they matched up with my beliefs. And I might ask people I trusted if they had any advice. First, I penciled in my answers. Then when I was sure of my choices, I carefully connected the two halves of the arrow with black ink for each office. You had to be extra careful on the propositions because sometimes the wording would be confusing, kind of like those test questions that say, which of the following are not the answer to this question, and if you miss the not, you end up doing the opposite of what you wanted. Nowadays, I vote by email since I'm out of the country, which is even more convenient than mail. But since I'm out of the loop on who is running for office in the local and state governments, I'm even more dependent on candidate websites, newspapers, and trusted friends to help me decide. Even when there's a clear frontrunner, that doesn't stop me from taking the time to research and to vote my conscience. This is a privilege and a right that I know women have had to fight hard to gain, and it's one way to flex our political muscle. But another way is to actually be a person on that ballot, so people can vote for you. I feel lucky to have been able to personally meet so many women politicians here in the relatively short time that I've been in New Zealand. Megan Woods, Poto Williams, Jan Logie, Eugenie Sage. I see these women engaging with real issues in their community, not being afraid to call it like it is, and their concern for women's well-being is clear. They're more accessible and real to me than any politicians I'd heard about or voted for back home, and they listened even though I'm not a voter here. And then there's Jacinda Ardern, whose inspiring talk last week interwove women's history with her encouragement for everyone to realize the goal of an equal and an equitable New Zealand. Whether or not they know it or want it, these women are role models for women like me. They make leadership roles seem achievable and worthwhile, something women should consider, whether it's politics, business, or the community. They give me hope that people in power can be part of decisions that make progress. But working for change can be a roller coaster ride, and sometimes I feel like the struggle is futile. It's easier to go with the flow and hope someone else will do something. In those times when things feel hopeless, I like to remember this story adapted from The Star Thrower by Lawrence C. Isley, which I'd like to share with you. A young girl was walking along a beach upon which thousands of starfish had washed up during a terrible storm. When she came to each starfish, she would pick it up and throw it back into the ocean. People watched her with amusement. She had been doing this for some time when an old man approached her and said, "Little girl, why are you doing this? Look at this beach. You can't save all these starfish. You can't even begin to make a difference." The girl seemed crushed, suddenly deflated. But after a few moments, she bent down, picked up another starfish, and hurled it as far as she could into the ocean. Then she looked up at the man and replied, "Well, I made a difference to that one." The old man looked at the girl inquisitively and thought about what she had done and what she had said. Inspired, he joined her in throwing starfish back into the sea. Soon others joined, and all the starfish were saved. Today we celebrate a great achievement by women whose efforts did make a difference. By gathering thousands of signatures over and over again, must not have been easy. Traveling the country, speaking at events, writing newspaper articles, even having to write under a pen name, as Marianne Muller did, because her partner disapproved. All of these things meant they could reach another person, and each signature on the suffrage petitions they presented to Parliament represented someone else who was convinced this was the right thing to do. They couldn't see when the end was, but they kept on going, and they paved the way for women in New Zealand and around the world to vote and have a voice in government. They left us a powerful legacy. Let's continue to make a difference through our votes and through our voices. Thank you.